What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters Allstar video, and in today's video we will be shining the spotlight in PvE firmly upon the newest SS character to be added into the game as part of SS Volume 3 beside SS Kula, and of course that is going to be SS K-Dash. We are going to go ahead and take a look at him in all things PvE, but before we do that, if you guys enjoy daily King of Fighters Allstar content such as this, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get into today's video. So first up here, we're going to start off with the typing and the leadership ability. The biggest thing when it comes to the typing that I would like to point out is this is going to make him very good for high tier reviving Hell's Dungeon, being a red balance. So no longer do you just have to suffer in silence using things such as the generic Unified Banner Chrysalid, nor the Lady Clone Zero. So this is a very good typing for a limited banner character. And then the leadership ability, it leaves him open to being a great leader for not only the SS and BS characters, but also collaboration characters. So overall, the leadership ability is fantastic. Now when we get into the cores, the first big thing you're going to notice is going to be that whopping 30% power charge rate increase. You always enjoy seeing that on any of these limited banner characters. And then if you go through here, if we get down to the exclusive cores, the biggest things that you want to point out is he is going to be a bit beholden to having Kula on the team, because you are going to increase your burn damage by 90% with her on the team. Now this does count if she's a striker, so keep that in mind. And then you can also decrease your cooldowns of your active skills by 0.4 seconds upon landing a skill on a burn target. We've seen this in the past on Ignis. This is a phenomenal little core and makes him very, very powerful. And then when you look at that shield, we've all seen that shield before. On top of the fact that it is going to absorb damage, it also affects your gravity. So this character has some really good cores, but he does have some issues that we're going to talk about here that hold him back slightly, regardless of what you see there. Now, of course, with the SS Volume 3 characters, the biggest thing that was added in is the derived skill mechanic, so we're going to talk about that. But basically, as you'll see here, on the Iron Trigger EX, he is going to have hyper armor, and this is an interrupt. However, the biggest thing here is this is the derived skill for this character, which means that it can chain into the following. The first skill here is going to increase your penetration by 1400 for 7 seconds, with a 70% chance to reset the cooldown of Iron Trigger EX upon landing a skill. So that is going to be the first derived skill on this S1, and then the final one is going to be used to increase your attack by 35% for 7 seconds, and then it also applies Infernal Flame. The biggest thing to keep in mind here, guys, is as of the time of recording this character is bugged. He will not run through all of these derived skills on semi-auto or auto. Keep that in mind. This means that if you want to get the full damage out of this K, you are going to need to be on manual, so keep that in mind. I'm sure they'll patch it. Now on to the S2, he is going to stun the target for 3 seconds upon landing a skill, guard included, and increases the target's damage received by 26% for 7 seconds. And then finally, on to the S3, he's going to deal burn damage equal to 1.8 times of the remaining burn damage and remove burn, with a 60% chance to remove the target's super or hyper armor upon landing a hit on a target with one of those. So this is going to be something else that's a bit controversial. He does have explosion. I will point out a few instances where this is going to be holding you back slightly, particularly in Guild Raid, but you can always avoid using it, especially when you have so many skills thanks to your derived skills. Now on the finisher, he does deal burn damage equal to 31% of attack every 1 second for 8 seconds upon landing it. This is going to be very important for him because, as you guys could see, he does have just that Infernal Flame on that derived skill. And then if we move on to the newest 3PG finisher, this is a wonderful finisher that deals additional burn damage equal to 200% of attack upon landing it. Now this character is going to be a burn bot basically, and this is going to make him very wanted in things such as Guild Raid Omega Rugal. However, there are going to be several instances there where he is going to be a little bit lackluster by comparison to a lot of his peers, and it's going to be very hard not to compare him to a lot of these other burn-based characters, just based upon the fact that right now in the game, some of the top tier PvE characters are burn-based, but it is something to point out. Overall, that's a phenomenal phenomenal finisher. But if we move on here, one of the things that does stand out about him is he does have a designated option card. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, but basically it's going to increase your attack by 5%, decrease your skill cooldowns by 1.2 seconds, and increase your burn damage dealt by 50% for 5 seconds upon using an active. Now this is a really good option. It's up to you guys as to whether or not you want to use this in lieu of other cards out there. However, I would say that in things such as the aforementioned Guild Raid, it's a very good option card to have. Now, when you want to talk about your stones, really my recommendation to you guys, I've already poached some of these for my Kyo because I am testing some things, but I just recommend going with a full set of the SS Volume 3 attack stones. This is something that I think is pretty obvious for this character, but really you just want to be going with the Volume 3 attack stones for now. You could talk about maybe intermixing some of the previous SS stones in here as well and kind of go through different combinations, but that is pretty much what you're looking at there. So next up here, we're going to go ahead and take a look at mobbing and bossing. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, first up here, we're going to go ahead and talk about mobbing. Now, of course, when it comes to mobbing, thanks to the fact that this character is going to be the beneficiary of being one of the first characters in the game to have the derived skill mechanic, this basically means that SSK- is going to be able to spam skills non-stop and really never have many gaps in between when it comes to his cooldowns. This is partially to do with the fact that he does have that really good core effect that is going to lower his overall skill cooldowns whenever he lands a basic. And honestly, when it comes to his mobbing, there's very little that you can complain about, especially when you consider the fact that he does have 2 finishers that are very strong for this particular type of position in the game. So honestly, you guys, when it comes to his mobbing, part of it has to do with the XY axis of his skills. Some of it has to do with the fact that his skills are very quick animation wise, but overall in mobbing, there really isn't a whole lot to say in the negative here. Honestly, you guys, the biggest thing I guess that you could really levy against him is the fact that he isn't necessarily going to be one-tapping everything automatically, thanks to the fact that his damage output and his multi-hits are a little bit on the low end, but we'll get back to that. Now, when it comes to normal bossing, this is really where K starts to shine because of the fact that he does have so many skills at his disposal. However, there are some idiosyncrasies about him that you need to keep in mind. Now, for the fact that he does have that burn explosion on his S3, typically what you're going to end up doing is you're probably more so just going to be leaning on your S1 and your S2 most of the time because you don't necessarily want to remove that burn explosion, because if you remove that burn, then you are going to be hampering your damage just a bit. Yes, you will get that nice bit of burst damage, but at the same time, especially in things such as Guild Raid, this does come up. However, really whenever you hit that awakening rotation, that's when K starts to do a lot of work, because he's going to have so many skills at his disposal thanks to the derived skill mechanic. If you go into your awakening rotation, most of these normal bosses are going to have a really hard time. However, he is going to have instances where sometimes, and I've noticed, he will face through bosses. He will have moments where he'll kind of, especially with his core finisher, decide that he's just going to go behind the boss and just start attacking nothing. So you have to keep some of these things in mind. This character does have moments where he kind of will goof up on you a little bit, but in general, there's really not a whole lot negative to be said about him in this regard, because honestly, for the fact that he does have that extra long awakening rotation and those extra skills, he's pretty much going to be able to go in and do whatever it is that you need him to do, as long as you have him at the appropriate awakening level and the appropriate build on him. And honestly, you guys, if you want a character that is going to go in and just nuke things off of the face of the planet, this is not going to be the character for you. This is more of a thinking man's burn unit, a character that is going to have a really nice kit overall with some nice perks and a ton of damage if you are able to play him right. However, he is never going to be a character that is going to achieve the numbers that you might be used to if you're somebody that is spoiled by characters such as Honoka or the SS Kios of the world. So keep that in mind. But of course that isn't to say that SSK isn't going to have a leg up on those other characters in some regards, because there are going to be certain situations and certain instances where K is going to be a little bit better than them, and mainly it has to do with the fact that he is going to be a balance type unit and not an attack type, which means that he is going to have a lot more survivability as well as sustainability, especially for the fact that he has that shield as well. And as you guys can see here against this Phantom Nest Maxima, I chose not to take down those pillars or use a character that was able to do so that way I could showcase his overall survivability in these types of modes. And as you guys can see, even regardless of the fact that he is going to be doing a lot of mitigated damage against this boss thanks to that pillar being in existence over there in that corner, this character is still going to be able to solo this boss without much of any issue and without taking much of any damage. So I guess if you could levy anything in his direction that is going to be a major leg up over some of his competition, it's probably going to be the fact that he is going to have better survivability, but in general the lower damage output is not necessarily an even trade-off in my opinion, but still phenomenal performance in both of these modes, and you can't really complain about much. Now when it comes to PVAI, this is really where this character is going to butter his bread. He is going to be a tier 1 championship character. If you guys have not seen the updated tier list from Saint for championship, check it out. But when it comes to PVAI, this is going to be a character that can just largely go in and bully most of the meta. Thanks to the fact that he has so many skills, he's going to be able to charge his finisher very quickly, and he has that shield. This character is just going to be a phenomenal option for PVAI and championship, so a really good option overall here. Now when it comes to Immortals, there are going to be a lot of things that can be said about K in this regard that are going to be in the positive, but let's go ahead and start from the top. So thanks to the fact that K does have that leadership ability that is going to increase All-Star Fighters' attack by 55%, while not ideal because typically you would like to see some power charge on your leader, this is still going to make him a really good and strong option for a leadership ability in this type of mode, especially when you consider the fact that he is going to be able to partner up with characters that are not just going to be SS and BS characters, but also all of your collaboration characters and give them that leadership ability. So that first and foremost is going to be working to his benefit, but also the fact that he is going to be an SS and a NES tagged character means that this is going to also open him up to a ton of different team comps, and really that is going to be somewhere where this character has a ton of versatility because of the fact that he does have some really beneficial tags in his kit, and the fact that he is going to be an SS character. You can pair him up with a ton of really good options in the game right now for things such as Immortals, and he is going to give you some top tier performance, unlike the previous K that we had that was the normal Unified Banner Fest K, where we had to babysit him with that 5PG finisher and try and time that correctly, and have moments where you might ruin a run because he might throw his glasses and miss or face through the character. When it comes to this particular K, he has none of those issues, thanks to the fact that that 3PG finisher is going to be so good and is going to have such a long animation on it. You can really do a lot when it comes to your clock stop ability with him, and if you put him with characters that are also going to be really good in that regard when it comes to being able to stop the clock, maybe other characters that are going to have really long finishers, you can kind of just go in and not have much of any issue doing a one team run on most of these Immortals, and really he is just going to be another name on the pile of really strong characters for this type of mode that we have gotten over the past several months. So he isn't doing anything particularly new here, he isn't going to be reinventing the wheel at all. However, he is still going to be able to put his name in the hat with some of those other top tier performers and do just as well, if not better than most of them. So really when it comes to Immortals, there really isn't a whole lot that you can say about him that is going to be anything negative. Maybe the fact that the damage output isn't necessarily the best, maybe the fact that you would prefer to be on semi-auto against these Immortals, or for some people even auto, because a lot of us can auto through some of these now, and he isn't going to be able to run through those chain of derived skills I'm not going to necessarily levy that too hard against him because I think that that will get patched sooner rather than later. But yes, guys, a really top tier Immortal character, and I really don't have much of anything to say in the negative about him. Now, when it comes to Guild Raid, this is where it gets a bit more controversial, and we are going to have some negatives that we need to talk about. So when it comes to Guild Raid, of course, on the face value, a lot of people would have assumed that this is where this character would have shined, but as you guys have seen undoubtedly already in the past, whether it's from footage from me or other YouTubers out there, or maybe you have tested it yourself already, this character is not necessarily going to be the greatest in Guild Raid. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he does not have a lot of multi-hits on his skills. So one of the big issues here is the fact that he is not going to be able to shred shield whatsoever, and his damage output really does start to show here because it is on the lower end by comparison to some of these other burn units that we've talked about already. And so as I've already mentioned, that this is where you can kind of see that come into play, whereas other characters are going to be doing just absolutely stupid amounts of damage. K is not going to be able to do that. Again, part of it is the fact that he is unable to get that shield down as quickly as others, but the other part of it has to do with the fact that you need to keep in mind that you need to avoid your S3 as much as possible when the shield is up. If you can do that and not remove that burn with that explosion on your S3, then you're going to be in a lot better shape than you would be if you were just kind of mindlessly rotating through your skills. Now, of course, whenever you're on your awakening rotation and the shield is down, world's your oyster, go crazy, you can use all of them. But when the shield is up, my recommendation to you guys, especially thanks to the fact that he is going to be able to lower his self cooldowns with his basics thanks to his cores, I would recommend just sticking with the S1 and the S2 and just trying to funnel through those when the shield is up, because that will give you a little bit better performance. But even then, that isn't necessarily going to make up for the fact that he is going to have lower end damage by comparison to other characters. So when it comes to Guild Raid, there are way better options out there. Another thing worth mentioning here, even though he does have the derived skills, even though he does have that extra long awakening rotation and so on and so forth, another big issue with this character when it comes to Guild Raid is the fact that he is only going to have one dot. So that means that really you're only going to be able to use him where you need burn damage, and as we've mentioned, there are plenty of options for that. So in the end, when it comes to Guild Raid, this is undoubtedly going to be the spot in the game, in PVE in particular, where he is going to suffer the most. This is arguably going to be the weakest mode for this character. There are a lot of places where this character does really well, but this is not one of them. He can do respectable damage, but in the end, there are just going to be far better options out there. So if you guys need any other characters that are going to have burn, I highly recommend other ones out there waiting for reruns, but still a good option nonetheless. And that is going to do it for SSK. So overall, he is going to be majorly flawed, but still a really strong fighter. However, I think that this basically means, thanks to him having tons of competition, that you can go ahead and safely skip this character. Now, of course, the usual caveats apply. If this is one of your favorite characters, you always pull for your favorites, because as always, you never know when they are going to get rotated back in. But when it comes to K, I really hate to see that he gets so much hate, because honestly, you guys, this isn't a bad character. As I've already shown you, yes, he does lack his overall damage output and shield shred ability that you would like to see on a lot of these characters in things such as Guild Raid, but there are so many other game modes out there, and that is really where this character is going to be really good. So while he isn't going to be perfect, and while he isn't as brain dead as other characters, in fact, I would argue that he is one of the more complicated characters to play correctly. Even if that is going to be the case, he does offer a bit of a challenge to the player in order to master him, and if you end up getting him down, you'll probably notice that he is going to be a lot more serviceable than you might have imagined. That doesn't take away the fact that he does have his issues, however, still a really good character in general, just not a must-have. So that is pretty much going to be it for today's video, you guys. I hope you all found it informative. Let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about about SSK. I know this has been a character that has been a little bit controversial for the community, so I know a lot of people out there are a little bit disappointed that he isn't going to be up to snuff, so to speak, by comparison to some of these other characters. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You all take care. Peace.
Continue.